The Hegemony Council's judgment chamber stretched like a cathedral of crystalline contempt, its walls carved from living coral that pulsed with bioluminescent disdain. 700 alien delegates floated in their environmental pods, arranged in ascending tiers that spiraled toward the vaulted ceiling. At the chamber's heart, the judicial triad. 3 beings so ancient their species had transcended flesh millennia ago, hovered in perfect geometric formation. High Arbiter Zeth Kalar's voice resonated through neural translators, each word dripping with condescension. The species designation human, Soul, 3 origin, has been evaluated according to Hegemony standards 847 through 1203. His form, a writhing mass of dark energy contained within ceremonial crystalline armor, pulsed with authority. In the human delegation pod, Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat rigid, her knuckles white against the restraint harness. Beside her, General Colton Kane's scarred face remained impassive, though she could see the vein throbbing at his temple. They had known this moment would come. 15 years of trying to earn humanity's place among the stars, 15 years of diplomatic overtures and cultural exchanges, and it had led to this. The evaluation concludes, Zeth Kalar continued, that humanity demonstrates irredeemable primitive aggression, technological inadequacy, and civilizational immaturity. Furthermore, the species exhibits disturbing tendencies toward unpredictable violence and resource competition. A ripple of approval swept through the chamber. The Veltar delegates, slug-like beings with translucent shells, secreted satisfied pheromones. The crystalline Orthiani chimed in harmonic agreement. Even the usually neutral Kefri, their tentacles writhing from their atmospheric suits, pulsed with synchronized bioluminescence. Therefore, the Arbiter's voice reached its crescendo. Humanity is hereby classified as subsentient, Category 7. Dangerous primitive. All technological exchange is forbidden. All territorial claims beyond the Sol system are voided. Humanity will remain under hegemony oversight for a minimum period of 5,000 standard cycles. The silence that followed was deafening. General Kane activated his pod's communication system. Arbiter, we request the right of final address. Zeth Kalar's energy form flickered with what might have been amusement. The primitive seeks to speak. How quaint. Murmurs of laughter echoed through the chamber. Very well. You have 60 standard seconds. Kane stood slowly, his Union Navy uniform immaculate despite the journey. At 62, his body bore the scars of the Titan Wars, the Martian Rebellion, and countless smaller conflicts that had forged humanity's martial spirit. His voice carried the quiet authority of a man who had led others through hell and brought them home. You call us primitive, he began, his words measured. You mock our aggression, our violence, our hunger to compete and conquer. He paused, scanning the tiers of alien faces. You're absolutely right. The chamber fell silent. We are violent. We are aggressive. We fight each other. We fight the environment. We fight entropy itself. You see this as primitive because you've forgotten what it means to struggle. His voice hardened. You've grown soft in your crystal palaces and biodomes, insulated from the harsh truths that forge strength. Arbiter Zeth Kalar's form darkened. Your time expires, human. Kane ignored him. But there's one thing you should know about primitives, Arbiter. We don't just fight to survive. He smiled, and there was something cold in it. We fight to win. The communication cut off. Security drones moved toward the human pod, their containment fields charging. But Kane wasn't finished. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a small device, a quantum resonance beacon. Before the aliens could react, he activated it. The beacon's pulse was invisible, inaudible, yet it traveled faster than light through dimensional folds that bypassed conventional sensors. It raced past the orbital platforms of Hegemony Prime, through the cosmic void, across the gulf of space to the Sol system's outer edge. There, hidden in the shadow of Neptune's largest moon, something ancient stirred. Commander Bella Joss felt the quantum pulse through the Titan's neural interface a split second before the ship's AI announced it. Beacon received. Authentication code verified. Operation Prometheus is authorized. She stood in the command center of humanity's greatest secret, a vessel so massive that its construction had required the mining of 3 asteroids and the complete output of Luna's shipyards for 7 years. The Titan was not just a ship. It was an idea made manifest, a testament to humanity's refusal to accept limitations. Status report, Joss commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was about to unfold. All systems optimal, replied Athena, the ship's quantum AI. Crew complement 15,000. All departments report ready for combat operations. The command deck around Joss buzzed with controlled activity. Unlike the sterile efficiency of alien warships, the Titan felt alive. Cables and conduits visible beneath transparent deck plating, holographic displays that responded to touch and gesture, the subtle vibration of massive fusion reactors coming online. "Ma'am," called Lieutenant Commander Torres from the tactical station. "Long-range sensors are picking up Hegemony fleet movements, 3 battle groups converging on the Proxima Centauri system." Joss nodded grimly. The aliens were moving to establish a blockade, to enforce their judgment through force. They had no idea what was coming. "Athena, initiate Phase 1. Take us to the edge of the system." The Titan's hull shimmered as its stealth systems activated. To any observer, the massive ship simply vanished, hidden by a combination of gravitational lensing, adaptive camouflage, and technology that bent space-time itself around the vessel. In the depths of the ship, Marine Colonel Jake Morrison stood before 3,000 of humanity's finest warriors. They wore powered armor that incorporated technologies reverse-engineered from a dozen alien civilizations, ceramite plating that could withstand directed energy weapons, neural interfaces that allowed superhuman reaction times, and weapons that had never been seen on any battlefield. "You all know why we're here," Morrison's voice carried through their helmet comms. "For 15 years, we've played by their rules. We've been polite, respectful, civilized, and they repaid us by calling us animals." He paused, letting that sink in. "Today, we remind them why their ancestors feared the dark between the stars. Today, we show them what primitives can do when you corner them." The Marines responded with a roar that echoed through the ship's corridors. The Hegemony Battle Group, Eternal, consisted of 47 vessels, each a masterwork of alien engineering. The flagship, a Veltar biocruiser called the Living Symphony, stretched for 2 kilometers and housed 30,000 crew members in perfect environmental harmony. Its captain, Fleet Marshal Kethnol, floated in his command pool surrounded by holographic displays showing the peaceful Proxima system. "Patrol routes established," reported his second-in-command. "All human traffic has been intercepted and detained for processing." Kethnol's translator implants conveyed satisfaction. The humans had a few research stations and mining operations in the system, primitive affairs that would be easy to contain. The blockade was largely ceremonial, a show of force to demonstrate hegemony authority. His complacency shattered when reality tore open 3,000 kilometers off their starboard bow. The Titan emerged from hyperspace like a nightmare given form. It was not elegant like hegemony vessels, with their flowing organic curves and crystalline structures. It was brutal, functional, a 2-kilometer spear of armored fury bristling with weapons that defied easy classification. "Contact!" screamed the sensor operator. "Unknown vessel. Massive energy signature." The transmission cut off as the Titan's opening salvo struck home. What emerged from the human ship was not conventional weapons fire. Instead, streams of exotic matter, antimatter contained within magnetic bottles, slammed into the hegemony formation. The first frigate to be hit simply ceased to exist, its atoms converting to pure energy in a flash that briefly outshone the system's star. "Return fire!" Kethenol commanded, his bioluminescent patches flashing with panic. "All units, return fire!" The hegemony ships responded with their own weapons: plasma cannons that could melt mountains, gravity hammers that crushed matter at the molecular level, viral programs designed to corrupt enemy ship systems. The space between the fleets lit up with destructive energies. None of it touched the Titan. The human ship moved through the barrage like a dancer, its hull rippling with adaptive shielding that absorbed or deflected each attack. When a gravity hammer struck its port side, the Titan's hull simply flowed around the impact zone like liquid metal, reforming seconds later without a scratch. "Impossible," Kethenol whispered. "Their technology level. The report said they were barely spacefaring." He never got an answer. The Titan's secondary weapons came online, mass drivers that accelerated tungsten rods to significant fractions of light speed. The projectiles punched through hegemony shields like paper, turning proud warships into expanding clouds of debris. In the Titan's command center, Joss watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. "Target their command ship. Disable, don't destroy. We want prisoners for interrogation." "Understood," Torres replied, firing EMP torpedoes. The electromagnetic pulses were contained within quantum bottles, making them invisible to conventional sensors until they detonated. The Living Symphony's bioelectric systems went haywire, its organic hull convulsing as neural pathways overloaded. The great ship went dark, drifting helplessly. "Boarding teams, deploy," Joss commanded. Launch bays along the Titan's hull opened, disgorging waves of assault craft. But these were not the crude shuttles hegemony expected. They were aerospace fighters that moved like living things, their hulls incorporating technology that made them nearly invisible to sensors. Colonel Morrison led the assault personally, his powered armor allowing him to survive the vacuum of space. His team cut through the Living Symphony's hull with plasma torches, entering the ship's biocorridors like antibodies invading a cell. The Veltar crew fought back with organic weapons, living projectiles that sought targets, viral agents designed to corrupt human biology, pheromone attacks that should have induced paralysis or madness. But humanity had spent decades studying captured alien technology, developing countermeasures for every threat they could imagine. Morrison's helmet display highlighted enemy positions as his squad advanced. The ship's organic architecture was both beautiful and grotesque. Walls that pulsed like arteries, floors that yielded underfoot like flesh, ceilings that wept bioluminescent fluid. "Control room ahead," reported Sergeant Martinez. "Heavy resistance." Morrison nodded, priming a containment grenade. "Remember, we need their command staff alive. Everyone else is expendable." The final assault was over in minutes. The Veltar, for all their technological sophistication, had never faced enemies like these. Humans bred for war, enhanced by technology, and driven by a fury that their peaceful society couldn't comprehend. Fleet Marshal Kethenol found himself face to face with Morrison, the human's armored bulk filling the organic chamber. Through his translator, Morrison's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You called us primitive," he said. "But primitives learn. We watched your ships, studied your weapons, reverse-engineered your technology. Then we made it better." Kethenol's bioluminescent patches flickered in terror. You cannot do this. The hegemony will negotiate," Morrison interrupted. "Or we'll dismantle your entire civilization one ship at a time. Your choice." The message reached Hegemony Prime within hours. The quantum transmission was brief, direct, and impossible to ignore. It came from the Titan, now broadcasting on all Hegemony frequencies. General Kane's image appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. He stood on the bridge of the human ship, his uniform pristine, his expression calm. Behind him, the twisted wreckage of the Hegemony fleet drifted in space. "I am General Colton Kane, representing the human species. Earlier today, your representatives classified us as primitive and placed our entire civilization under what you call oversight. We reject both the classification and the authority." The broadcast reached the Hegemony Council chambers just as an emergency session was convening. Arbiter Zethkala's energy form flickered with what could only be described as shock. Kane continued, his voice carrying across the galaxy. "You see our violence as primitive. We see it as necessary. You see our aggression as dangerous. We see it as survival. You see our hunger for growth as threatening. We see it as life itself." On the screen behind him, tactical displays showed the Titan's position. Not fleeing, but holding station, daring the Hegemony to respond. "You have a choice," Kane said. "Withdraw your judgment, recognize humanity as an equal member of galactic civilization, or face the consequences. We are not asking for your approval anymore. We are telling you how things will be." The transmission shifted to show the Titan's weapons systems. Antimatter cannons that could crack planets, mass drivers that could accelerate projectiles to near light speed, exotic matter torpedoes that collapsed space-time itself. And underneath it all, the quiet hum of technology that should not have existed for another millennium. "We learned from you," Kane said. "Every species you conquered, every technology you suppressed, every weapon you banned. We studied it all. We took your peaceful trade missions and archaeological expeditions and turned them into intelligence operations. While you debated our primitive nature, we were building this." The image shifted again, showing not just the Titan, but the shipyards that had built it. Massive orbital facilities hidden in the dark between stars, automated factories that could construct entire fleets, research stations that had unlocked the secrets of technologies older than most of your civilizations. "You wanted to contain us," Kane concluded. "Instead, you taught us how to break our chains. The question now is whether you want to coexist with us as equals, or discover what we've been building while you weren't looking." The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, 1,000,000 worlds fell silent. In the depths of the Titan, Joss stood before a strategic display showing the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated Hegemony strongholds, blue markers showed human positions, and scattered throughout were green markers, species that had been contained by the Hegemony over the millennia, civilizations reduced to client states or worse. "Athena," she said quietly. "Begin Phase 2. "Confirmed, Commander. Quantum relays are online. Message buoys are positioned. Are you certain about this course of action?" Joss thought about Earth, about the billions of humans who deserved to reach for the stars without asking permission. She thought about all the species that had been crushed under the Hegemony's benevolent tyranny. She thought about what it meant to be human in a galaxy that saw compassion as weakness and cooperation as primitive. "Send the signal," she said. Across the galaxy, dormant quantum relays came online. On 1,000 worlds, hidden transmitters began broadcasting on frequencies the Hegemony had never imagined. And in the dark between stars, other ships began to stir, vessels built by species that remembered freedom, that had waited generations for someone to fire the first shot. The rebellion had begun. In the Hegemony Council chamber, Arbiter Zethkala's energy form pulsed with increasing frequency. Around him, delegates from 100 species muttered in their native tongues, their universal message the same: panic. "The humans have violated every principle of galactic law," declared the Veltar representative. "They must be contained before—" "Before what?" interrupted a new voice. The chamber fell silent as High Counselor Vexithane materialized, a being so ancient that his species had transcended physical form before most others had developed spaceflight. Before they remind us what we used to be. Zethkalar's form flickered. "High Counselor, surely you don't support—" "I support survival," Vexithane replied. "And the humans have just demonstrated something we forgot long ago, that sometimes peace is bought with the threat of war." He gestured, and holographic displays showed the Titan's specifications. The technology was impossible by hegemony standards, incorporating principles that their peaceful civilization had declared too dangerous to pursue. "They learned from us," Vexithane continued. "But they also learned from our enemies, species we defeated so thoroughly that we forgot why we feared them. The humans didn't just study our science, they studied our history, our wars, our nightmares, and they made them real." On the display, new contacts were appearing throughout the galaxy. Ships emerging from hidden bases, sleeping giants awakening after centuries of enforced slumber. The hegemony's careful order was fracturing. "What do you propose?" asked the Orthani delegate, their crystalline form resonating with anxiety. Vexithane's form solidified, taking on a shape that resembled his species' ancient warrior caste. "We negotiate." The meeting took place in neutral space, aboard a station built for the purpose in the ruins of an ancient battlefield. The Titan held position alongside a dozen hegemony vessels, neither side backing down, but both recognizing the necessity of dialogue. Ambassador Vasquez walked through corridors that had been constructed in hours by automated systems, her footsteps echoing in spaces designed to accommodate a dozen different atmospheric requirements. Behind her walked General Kane, his presence a reminder of the fleet that waited beyond the station's shields. They entered a chamber where Arbiter Zethkalar waited, his energy form contained within a specialized field generator. Other hegemony representatives flanked him, species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, now facing the unthinkable possibility that their order might change. "You have come to surrender your illegal vessel," Zethkalar began, his voice carrying its usual condescension. Kane laughed, a sound that carried no humor. "We've come to dictate terms." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Alien delegates shifted in their environmental suits, bioluminescent patches flickering with stress patterns. Vasquez stepped forward, her diplomatic training taking over. "The Terran Federation offers the following terms. First, immediate recognition of humanity as a sovereign species with full rights to territorial expansion and technological development." "Impossible," hissed the Veltar delegate. "Your species has demonstrated—" "Second," Vasquez continued, ignoring the interruption. "Withdrawal of all hegemony oversight and monitoring systems from human space. Your primitive nature requires—" "Third," Kane interjected, his voice cutting through the protests like a blade. "Full disclosure of suppressed technologies and the location of all species currently under containment by hegemony authority." Silence fell over the chamber. This wasn't negotiation, it was ultimatum. Arbiter Zethkalar's form pulsed with what might have been rage. "You dare make demands? You who have existed for barely a cosmic instant, presume to dictate terms to civilizations that are older than your sun." Kane smiled. "Age doesn't matter when you're dead." He activated a holographic display that showed the galaxy from a strategic perspective. Red markers indicated hegemony strongholds. Green markers showed the positions of species that had thrown off their containment, and blue markers human positions were spreading like a virus through previously secure systems. "While we've been talking," Kane said, 17 more species have declared independence from hegemony control. Our quantum relay network is broadcasting technical specifications for weapons and shields that can neutralize your advantages. In 6 hours, you won't be fighting just us. You'll be fighting everyone you've spent the last 10,000 years oppressing. The display zoomed in on specific systems. On Veltar Prime, organic defense platforms were being consumed by nanite swarms that converted their own biotechnology against them. In the crystal mines of Orthanis, enslaved species were using jury-rigged human weapons to break their chains. Throughout the galaxy, the careful order of millennia was collapsing. "This is madness," whispered the Kefri representative. "You're destroying civilization itself." "No," Vasquez replied, her voice steady. "We're giving it back to the people you stole it from." High Counselor Vexithane materialized in the center of the chamber, his ancient form commanding attention from all present. "Enough." His voice carried the weight of eons. "The humans have demonstrated something we believed extinct, the will to risk everything for freedom. Perhaps that is not primitive at all." He turned to face the human delegation. "Your terms." Kane leaned forward. "Recognition, autonomy, and reparations. Every species you've contained gets the same treatment. Full technological exchange, no restrictions. The Hegemony Council becomes an actual council of equals, not a dictatorial authority. And if we refuse?" Kane's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then we keep fighting. And primitives like us, we're very good at fighting." Vexithane considered this for a long moment. Around him, the other delegates muttered in a dozen languages, their words carrying fear, anger, and a growing recognition that their age of unquestioned authority was ending. "Very well," he said finally. "We accept your terms." The signing ceremony took place aboard the Titan itself, in a hangar bay that had been converted into a diplomatic chamber. Representatives from 100 species gathered to witness the birth of what would become known as the Galactic Confederation, a union of equals rather than a hierarchy of oppression. Commander Joss stood at the observation deck, watching as centuries of precedent crumbled. The Hegemony's representatives signed with obvious reluctance, their bioluminescent patches and energy forms flickering with suppressed rage. But they signed. "Ma'am," came a voice behind her. She turned to see Lieutenant Torres, a data pad in his hand. "Final casualty reports." Joss took the pad, scanning the numbers. In the short war that would reshape galactic civilization, humanity had lost 3,000 people. The Hegemony had lost over 1 million, but more importantly, they had lost their illusion of invincibility. "Any regrets?" Torres asked quietly. Joss looked out at the diplomatic ceremony, then at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, on 1,000 worlds, enslaved species were breathing free air for the first time in generations. Somewhere children would grow up learning that the universe was vast and welcoming, not carefully controlled and restricted. "None," she said. Below them, General Kane was speaking to the assembled delegates. His words were being broadcast across the galaxy, carried by the same quantum relay network that had coordinated the rebellion. "Today marks the end of the age of containment," he said. "For too long, civilization has been defined by those who sought to limit it, to control it, to make it safe and predictable. But safety and predictability are not civilization. They are stagnation." He gestured to the humans and aliens around him, former enemies now bound by common cause. Civilization is the collision of ideas, the friction of different perspectives, the creative chaos that emerges when free beings choose to work together despite their differences. It is not the absence of conflict, It is the transformation of conflict into progress. The chamber fell silent as his words sank in. They called us primitive because we fight, because we struggle, because we refuse to accept that things cannot change. Kane's voice carried across space to 1,000,000 listening worlds. But it is that primitive struggle that drives us forward. It is that primitive refusal to accept limitations that makes us grow. He looked directly at the hegemony representatives. We thank you for the lesson. You taught us that civilization without the freedom to choose is not civilization at all. It is merely existence. Today we choose something different. Today we choose to be primitive. The ceremony concluded with the formal ratification of the Galactic Confederation Charter. As delegates dispersed and ships began their journeys home, the Titan remained in position, a silent guardian watching over the birth of a new age. In her quarters, Ambassador Vasquez drafted her final report to Earth. Her words would be recorded in the archives alongside humanity's other great moments. The first steps on Luna, the colonization of Mars, the moment when human beings looked at the vast galaxy and decided they belonged among the stars. Today, we learned that primitive is not an insult. It is a choice. The choice to fight rather than surrender, to grow rather than stagnate, to reach for something greater even when the cost is everything we have. The galaxy called us primitive, and we proved them right. But we also proved that primitive is not weak. Primitive is not simple. Primitive is the refusal to accept that this is all there is. The age of asking permission is over. The age of taking our place among the stars has begun. In the depths of space, the Titan's engines hummed with quiet power. The ship that had been humanity's greatest secret was now its promise to the galaxy, that some things were worth fighting for, that some freedoms were worth any price, and that sometimes being primitive was exactly what civilization needed. The stars waited, vast and welcoming, ready for what came next. Epilogue. 1 year later, Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood in the Confederation Council chamber on New Geneva Station, watching as the latest session came to order. The chamber was chaos compared to the sterile perfection of the old hegemony. Delegates arguing, debating, sometimes even shouting at each other in a dozen languages. It was beautiful. The Veltar representative was locked in heated discussion with a HFY scientist about terraforming protocols. The crystalline Orthiani were resonating in harmonic disagreement with a group of newly liberated silicon-based beings. In the corner, a human engineer was sharing technical specifications with 3 different species, their universal translators struggling to keep up with the rapid exchange of ideas. "Regretting our choice?" asked a familiar voice. Vasquez turned to see General Kane, now serving as the Confederation's first military coordinator. His uniform bore insignia from a dozen different species, symbols of the new alliance they had forged. "Never," she replied. "This is what civilization looks like when it's alive." Through the station's observation ports, ships from 100 worlds moved in coordinated traffic patterns. Traders, explorers, scientists, and settlers, all carrying the banner of the Confederation to the furthest reaches of space. Humanity's ships moved among them as equals, no longer asking permission to exist. "The hegemony holdouts are requesting another meeting," Kane reported. "Seems they want to discuss normalizing relations." Vasquez smiled. "Tell them we'll be happy to discuss it. As equals." As if summoned by their conversation, a familiar energy form materialized nearby. High Counselor Vexus Thane had become the Confederation's most unlikely advocate among the Old Guard, working to convince the remaining hegemony systems to embrace the new order. "The humans continue to amaze us," he said, his ancient voice carrying a note of something that might have been amusement. "Your species discovers faster than light travel, makes contact with galactic civilization, gets classified as primitive and responds by overthrowing the established order. Most impressive. Most primitive, Kane corrected with a grin. Indeed, Vexathane agreed. And perhaps that is exactly what we needed. Together, they watched the stars through the station's transparasteel dome. Somewhere out there, in the dark, between worlds, other civilizations waited to be discovered. Some would be peaceful, others hostile. Some would be ancient beyond imagining, others newly emerged from their home worlds. But whatever they were, whatever they brought to the galactic community, they would find a confederation that had learned the value of primitive virtues, the willingness to fight for what was right, the refusal to accept arbitrary limitations, and the understanding that true civilization was not built on control, but on the chaotic, beautiful collision of free minds working toward something greater than themselves. The Titan hung in distant orbit, its weapons powered down but ready. A reminder to all who saw it that some things were still worth fighting for, and that humanity, primitive, aggressive, chaotic humanity, would always stand ready to protect the freedom they had won. In the end, they had been called primitive, and they had proven that sometimes primitive was exactly what the galaxy needed. The stars waited, infinite and welcoming, for whatever came next. The end.